I'm pleased to share our agenda for tonight. In just a moment, I will pass things over to Bruce Siebold, who is our current board chair. He joined our board in 2019. And then we'll move along to Michelle for a financial and operations update. I will share a fundraising and community engagement update. And at 5:30 approximately, we will move into the conservation report. And we are pleased to have a guest speaker with us tonight. Pamela Toshner is joining us to present information about Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources and their strategic priorities around watershed protection. We'll end with some general Q&A as well as specific Q&A related to the Brownstone Trail. And we do plan to wrap up by 6:30. And now I have the pleasure of introducing Bruce Siebold, who joined our board in 2019 and began serving as chair at the beginning of this fiscal year, July 1. Welcome, Bruce.
Thanks, Kristen. It really is an honor for me to put a warm welcome out to everyone here for joining this annual meeting. As Kristen said, I've been on the board since 2019, and a background of always being in touch with the land, from a farm boy to a hunter and fisherman, cabin up in Grantsburg, Wisconsin, nestled in by the Creeks Meadows and Governor Knowles State Forest, to 80 acres of land that I live on in Menominee right now. So the land has always been important to me, and that's why I really was excited about serving as a board member for the Landmark Conservancy. What you see in front of you is the couple of photos. On the top is the staff. This is at a recent meeting we had, board meeting we had in Spooner, Wisconsin, and below it is some of the board of directors. Many of the people were on Zoom, so it's not everyone is there. But you can see the names on the left, and you can see the officers and at the large members as well. So go ahead, Kristen. So in 2021, last fall, we announced our strategic plan at our annual meeting. And as you all know, when you go through strategic plans, they're messy, they're chaos. There's lots of different opinions. And when you're trying to direct people to say that you're going to think ahead, what we're going to need to do in 3 to 5 years, it really becomes hard to do that. So we went through all the work, and thanks to 2 former presidents or chairs of the board, Bill Butzik and Kim Brough, we made it through. And so after the strategic plan was accepted, then we broke it into, okay, what is the big buckets of things we're trying to do? And they broke them into 3 buckets. So we want to engage the public. We want to engage as many community members as possibly can. We want to grow, protect our lands through conservation easements and acquisitions, and we need to have it sustainable. So that's the 3 big items that we're working on. I want to announce some new members that we have on the board of directors, and 2 people have left the board of directors. The first one that is left was Rory Cameron and Bob Dufery. They were on the board during the merger, and their advice and sage council helped us through the merger process, but they have now left, and we want to thank them for all their service. We also have 2 new board members. Oh, by the way, John Grape was on our board for many months, and he just left in the middle of the year, but we're going to thank John for his work too. 2 new board members are Laurel Sukup, who is our DNR representative from Madison. Her title is Chief Sustainability and Business Support Person. She has a home in Bayfield, and she is a wonderful addition to the board. Her clarity of thinking, she works on both the governance committee and on the development committee, so she is a big plus to the committee. The second new board member is Gary Sirfas, and he is a Bear Paw Brook Farms owner in Ojibwa. He's a former board member of the Coudray Waters Region Land Trust, and he is a CPA. So he brings a lot of good information and background to our development committee. So those are the new members. Our new staff members, Angie Anderson. She's our administrative associate, and she's the person that when you call, I say she has a smile in her voice. She welcomes everyone with a smile in her voice. So if you call in, you're probably going to get a hold of Angie Anderson to begin with. Katie Hahn was recently hired this past year. She's our stewardship specialist, and she came from a background in the DNR out of the Cross region. Charlie Kearns, he's a conservation consultant out of northern, at our northern center to help Erica out up there. And Zariah Whitaker is our communications specialist, who is just started about a month ago now, and we're delighted to have all these new members on. This is a new generation of people coming in to our staff. So Kristen was kind enough to write me some bullet points or some talking points. And after every one, she says, be brief. So I am going to try to be brief. And if she starts running through these slides really fast, I am all done here. But let me just say that I'm really welcoming you to this annual meeting. Enjoy it. I think the superstars are coming next, and that's all the people that are doing all the heavy lifting for the Landmark Conservancy. Thank you and welcome once again.
All right, thank you so much, Bruce. Next, I'm happy to introduce Michelle von Ruden. While she joined our team just over a year ago, this may be this first time some of you are meeting her. Michelle comes to us from the for-profit world of accounting, finance, and operations, with 15 years of experience in her fields.
Thank you, Kristen, for that introduction. I have to say, it's been a very busy first year as we not only moved our financials from external contracts to in-house, but personally learning about the nonprofit conservation world. So without further ado, let's get into the agenda. Tonight, I will be giving an overview of our statement of financial position, endowments, and operations. Total assets for the year ending 6/30/22 are $12,078,151, with the bulk of it being conservation land at about $9.6 million. Current checking and savings accounts come to just over $1.1 million, thanks in part to a generous bequest we received just before the end of the fiscal year. We had about $308,000 in liabilities. $250,000 of that was a generous bridge loan that allowed us to acquire the Telemark Forest Preserve in the fall of 2021. The loan was paid back in July of 2022 as promised. Looking at our income chart, you will see most of our income comes from individual contributions, and this year we also had the generous bequest I mentioned before, listed here at the right of the chart. Having many income streams is preferred. It allows us to be diversified and better able to handle challenging economic times. Throughout the fiscal year, we had on average 6 months of operating reserves, which is where we strive to be. You'll notice on the right, we have restrictions. So we do track all funds that come in that are restricted to projects or conservation areas. As you can see here, we are carrying forward roughly $542,000 in restricted funds. You will see we have almost $162,000 in board restricted funds. When we received the bequest at the end of last year, we wanted to make sure we use the funds properly, and the finance committee and ultimately the board approved splitting the funds 3 ways: operational needs, new land projects, and stewardship to go into our endowments. Speaking of endowments, as you can see here, we have quite a few, so I won't read them to you. But you can always come back and refer to them when we release the video. We have 2 types of endowments, agency and non-agency. The agency funds live on our balance sheet, and the non-agency funds, we don't own the funds per se, but we are the beneficiary. Due to the markets, we have decided to split our bequeathed funds into 4 payments, ending this calendar year. We want to make sure we are investing the funds wisely given the current markets. So I'm probably getting close to my allotted time at this point, but I wanted all of you to be aware that we did apply for reaccreditation this year, which once it's approved, we will be accredited for the next 5 years. Going through reaccreditation is much like going through a financial audit. However, it encompasses the entire organization. Finally, We contracted with Bauman and Associates based out of Eau Claire for 3 audit periods last year. I am happy to report that the year ending 6/30/2021 was completed successfully without any issues. We have also completed our audit for our fiscal year 21-22, and Bauman Associates will be presenting their findings at our next board meeting. We do not anticipate any issues. Bauman is also preparing our 990s and charitable organization filings for us. Now, this may be more detailed than you're familiar with, but as we navigate these trying financial times, I want you, our donors, volunteers, and partners, to understand that we truly appreciate your gifts and that you have a right to know how we are protecting them. After all, you donate your hard-earned time and dollars because you believe in us and you believe in our mission. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Michelle. Next up, I have some fundraising and community engagement highlights to share with you. I'm pleased to provide some updates on recent projects that have included a high level of community participation through fundraising and share a summary of our outreach and engagement over the past year. Community engagement is key to how people come to learn about our work. Oftentimes, it's through experiences on a particular property. Several are more visible and well-known, like the Brownstone Trail or the Devil's Punch Bowl, for example. And increasingly, we're meeting new supporters through events that we host, frequently in partnership with other organizations. I'm thrilled to share improvements about the Devil's Punch Bowl that were completed this past year. We have owned this 3-acre property for over 20 years, located just outside of Menominee. The Punch Bowl is known for its iconic natural rock amphitheater, fern-covered cliffs, and waterfall. Until recently, it was unfortunately also known for a somewhat rickety lower stairway. But thank you to our supportive community. Thanks to our community, we have built a modern, safer stairway that significantly improves recreation experiences while safeguarding ecological resources through better management of off-trail traffic. We're also working to ensure that Landmark can be a good steward of the Devil's Punch Bowl long-term through the establishment of an endowment. So in 2021, matching grants were secured in the form of a Knowles Nelson Stewardship Grant, as well as an Endowment Challenge Grant from the Community Foundation of Dunn County. The community came through with fantastic support. However, our contractor plans fell through and costs increased. So this year, we were able to secure both a contractor and supplemental match, and we celebrated completion of a new lower stairway this summer with a ribbon cutting with our local Menominee Chamber of Commerce. The Telemark Forest Preserve, this opportunity outside of the right outside of the cable area came up very quickly. We had initial conversations about land protection with the American Birkebeiner Ski Foundation in 2020. And thanks to strong interest from an engaged community, as well as Landmark's ability to shift focus with support from our board, we moved from an initial site visit in late 2020 with discussions focused on conservation easements to the purchase of a parcel that was actively being considered for real estate development. We signed a land contract in early July of 2021 and raised $700,000 to complete the acquisition in about 10 months. Thanks to all who rallied in support of this important land protection project. Conservation of this intact forest is key to protection of high quality area water resources. Large contiguous blocks of forest land provide needed migration corridors for both plant and animal species, and the property is open to the public for low impact recreation. This photo is from a summer hike led by Northland College geology professor and former Landmark board member, Tom Fitz. We are in the early stages of exploring ways we can continue to partner with American Birkebeiner Ski Foundation and other local groups. Brownstone Trail restoration. Much of our efforts related to the Brownstone Trail this past year centered on negotiation to purchase property from the Mackey family and arriving at a solution that met our needs for restoring the trail, as well as their needs for operating their businesses during unprecedented economic challenges created by a global pandemic. We reached an agreement in late spring, and Landmark began actively fundraising to purchase the Mackey land upslope from the closed section that you see on this map. We plan to purchase the land by year's end. A new temporary reroute will be open this fall, which allows foot access across the Mackey property while we're working to purchase it. This will help to get some of our trail users off the curve along Highway 13. However, it's not accessible to bicycles or strollers due to steps involved. Pending successful fundraising, we expect to close on the property in December and begin initial restoration work on the slope next year. Landmark has agreed to lease the property back to the Mackey family for a period of time as they transition their businesses to another site. This project would not be possible without the generous support of Kim and Kito Reimer, who are matching the first $500,000 raised dollar for dollar. We're very pleased to announce a recent grant award of $100,000 from the Mary H. Rice Foundation in honor and celebration of the life of Mary H. Rice. As you can see, this generous award has brought us just past the halfway mark. So we're right on track to achieve our goal by year end. But if you haven't yet participated in giving to phase one, there is still a chance to double your donation. We have $200,000 remaining of matching funds. So we'll have some time at the end of the call to focus on Brownstone Trail as part of our Q&A. But please feel free to reach out directly with questions as well. Finally, a few words on community engagement. You can see some numbers here about the number of volunteers and participants we have enjoyed engaging with over the past year. We've hosted a variety of outdoor experiences and further developed partnership around events. Educational topics have included pollinators, insects, geology, forest ecology, native tree identification, and more. We engage people in outdoor recreation activities like canoeing, birding, hiking, and snowshoeing. Volunteers helped with stewarding protected lands and got their hands dirty removing invasive species, building trails, weeding rain gardens, and collecting seed for prairie restoration, among other things. Later this fall, we'll be sharing a seasonal calendar of events, which we plan to share every quarter. Please watch for this and continue joining us in person or online for events in the coming season. And a special thank you to all of our partners, and in particular, some of the ones listed here that we've partnered with multiple times over the past year. Your partnership really helps to extend our reach, and we are so grateful. Next up, I have the pleasure of introducing Rick Remington. Many of you know Rick as he's been working hard to protect important land in western and northwestern Wisconsin for 20 years. Our staff actually celebrated Rick's 20-year anniversary just last week. We feel so honored to have his longtime leadership of our conservation program, but he's really not one to bask in the accolades. So without further ado, I'm happy to introduce Rick Remington to give our conservation report.
Thank you, Kristen. Hello, everybody. You know, she keeps trying to make me blush every time by saying something like that, and it's starting to work. So thank you, Kristen. It's been a lot of fun, and I look forward to the next 20 years because there's a lot of important work to do. So I'm here this evening to talk about Landmark Conservancy's conservation program, which encompasses the stewardship of our conservation easements, the management of the land that we own, and the new lands that we are protecting, and a little bit of a sneak peek to some projects we have underway. Before I talk about conservation easement stewardship, I never want to enter into a room or a Zoom call and assume that everybody on the call or in the room understands what a conservation easement is. I know this is a pretty smart crowd, but I'm just going to back up a minute and give a little conservation easement 101. A conservation easement is a voluntary legal agreement or document that permanently restricts or limits the use of land to protect its natural and conservation values. Landmark currently holds 220 conservation easements that cover over 26,000 acres, 26,690. So that's an area of about an entire township plus. Most of this land is in private ownership. Some of it is also in town, county, DNR, and other conservation partner ownership, but the vast majority is privately owned. Our conservation staff and volunteers monitor each and every one of our conservation easement properties every single year. And that's kind of the tip of the iceberg. Beyond our annual monitoring, we deal with a plethora of issues and challenges dealing with forest management plan approvals, building plan approvals, transitions of ownership from one landowner to another, questions from buyers, sellers, realtors, agents, attorneys, you name it. All of that falls to our conservation team, which consists of Katie Hahn, Andrew Norman, myself, Erica Lang, and Charlie Kearns. We also use the help of the 22, I believe, conservation easement volunteer monitors as well. Last year, when I talked about conservation easement stewardship, I mentioned that we were just beginning to pilot landscape stewardship software, which has really enhanced our ability to steward our conservation easement portfolio. This year, I can safely say that we are now monitoring 85% of our conservation easement lands using landscape software and the mobile app that you can use on your cell phone. We have board members doing this, volunteers, and as well as our staff. This has really increased our efficiencies in both navigation on site and also the administration of our conservation easement portfolio in tracking change in ownership over time. So from someone like myself who's been doing this a long time, landscape has really taken conservation easement stewardship into the 21st century. On to land management. So Landmark owns 22 nature preserve or nature preserve complexes, which may consist of a couple different tracts close together, covering over 2,700 acres. These are not all created equal. Some of these are very tiny properties that are very intensively used, like the Devil's Punch Bowl. And on the upper end, we have Tyler Forks Community Forest at 590 acres and everything in between. So the use and infrastructure of each property is not equal and varies dramatically. For our land management team, that includes safety and security, things like signage and boundary work, but also resource protection and restoration, planning for recreational amenities or improvements like trails and parking, and also engaging the community. I have a little snapshot here of 3 or 4 land management projects that we've undertaken over this past year, just to kind of show you the diversity of tasks that we're working on. This is the pictures from the Mary Fitz Memorial Park, which is a 79-acre property in Eau Claire County, about 5 minutes outside of Eau Claire. About 6 to 7 years ago, we embarked on this property, which consisted of old agricultural fields and a pine plantation. And we had an idea to convert it into a tall grass prairie with a system of nature trails that would allow people to experience a grassland landscape 5 minutes from Eau Claire. At that time, we removed the pine plantations. We started doing mechanical and chemical treatment of brush, and we started planning for a prairie. We worked with the Chippewa Valley chapter of Pheasants Forever. We farmed a soybean field for a year to prep the site bed, and we planted the site and worked tenaciously at controlling woody and invasive species that moved in. After what I think is about 6 to 7 years now, we're finally able to introduce Fighter to the site just this past spring, which will hopefully stimulate more prairie grasses and forbs and begin to get the site looking like we hope it will in the future. For anybody that's familiar with prairie restoration, it looks a lot like a war zone for a number of years before the site really begins to improve. And so this getting prescribed fire back on the site is really a milestone. Jumping about an hour or so north to northern Chippewa County, we have the Chippewa Glacial Lakes Preserve. This is really close to the Rusk Chippewa County line, where we own a 79-acre property that's adjacent to a DNR state natural area that harbors a segment of the Ice Age Trail. It's there that we worked with an Eagle Scout on his project, along with the Chippewa Moraine chapter of the Ice Age Trail Alliance, to construct a spur trail leading from the IAT into our property, where we can have a campsite overlooking a small wild lake. So you see pictures here of the Eagle Scouts working on the trail, as well as the campsite and trail. I'm told by the Ice Age volunteers in the area that this is the nicest campsite in that segment of trail because it's so close and provides such a wonderful view of that lake, something that you couldn't find on all the adjoining tracks the IAT goes through. So thanks to the Scouts as well as the chapter and their volunteers. Going even further north, all the way up to the chocolate milky shores along the Douglas County Lake Superior. We have our Mouth of the Middle River Preserve, which was acquired just a couple years ago at 53 acres. This past year, Charlie and AJ constructed about 1/3 of a mile trail that will able to enter the property through township land and get folks down to the shore of the Great Lake. I think this picture is a fascinating photo, not only of AJ and our new brush mower, but of the nature of that particular section of shoreline, which pretty much looks like this quite a bit as it drains the clay plain. You get that chocolate milk covered water that is dramatically different than what you often see on the Bayfield Peninsula or on the North Shore in Minnesota. And then jumping a little bit eastward to Ashland County, where we have our flagship Tyler Forks Community Forest at 590 acres, where we've embarked on the construction of additional trail and a boardwalk, a 350-foot boardwalk in conjunction with Northland College students, and a grant secured from the Department of Natural Resources in partnership with the town of Morse. Here you see a couple of happy students working on the trail and a segment of that boardwalk. This property is adjacent to Copper Falls State Park and the trail system here that will allow folks to get down closer to the river and also access the state park land from our property. Now I'm going to talk about some of the new land protection projects that we executed this year. As Kristen and Michelle shared, our fiscal year runs from July 1st till the end of June of the following year. So at any point in time, our conservation team is onboarding new projects, working on projects that have been in the hopper for a number of months, if not years, and also hopefully wrapping up some accomplishments. So you see here the dots on the map indicating completed projects in the fiscal year, as well as the green dots indicating some of the projects that are in progress. This year's 2,300 or so acres cover a variety of project types, including land acquisitions, donated conservation easements, trail easements, the assignment of existing conservation easements from some of our partners, and also amendments of existing conservation easements, which we don't count the acreage on, but continue to protect new land in different ways by removing additional rights from those easement properties. Down in the southern part of our 20-county service area, we have the Bacon Coulee project, which we closed at the very end of last year. This is, interestingly, Landmark's largest conservation project to date. So I think it's kind of a milestone and hurdle. You know, when our conservation team looks at new projects, we look at a number of different attributes, including the habitat type, the proximity to other protected land, and certainly size and acreage is something we look at closely. This property kind of has it all. It's got forest, a native brook trout stream, and a moist cliff community that hence the name Bacon Coulee. There's also traditional agricultural land and what I call conservation cover, which is a mosaic of CRP or Conservation Reserve Program land, planted prairie, and permanent hay or grass cover. So it was a pleasure working with Joe and Betsy Bacon on this large project, and probably because of its complicated composition, one of the more challenging of my career. This is a couple hours north. This property is called Petty Lake Moraine, donated conservation easement, which is also pretty large for our standards at 550 acres, about 10 minutes or so outside of Hayward. The property includes, as you might expect in that area, primarily forested, but it has sedge meadow, tamarack bogs, and 2 named water resources, which are Spring Lake Creek and Petty Lake. Also interestingly, and I'm not a geologist, so I can't talk too intelligently about this, but the property contains an interlobate moraine, also referred to as a kettle moraine. Many of you have heard of the kettle moraine in southern Wisconsin, but a kettle moraine can also refer to the intersection or collision of 2 lobes of a glacier, each bringing with it its respective moraine, and where they touch, the landscape and topography can get quite convoluted and quite interesting, hence the reason you have all of these different communities and water resources on site. Next, we're jumping down south to our own county here, Dunn County. This is about a half hour, 40 minutes south of our office in Menominee, where we pulled off the Meriden Barrens acquisition. So this is a long project that many of you have probably read about some of our materials, where we acquired 360 acres from Xcel Energy. Can you imagine the view you're seeing on the screen here in front of you, being the view as you look from the cooling towers of a nuclear power facility? Well, that's what it could have been. Back in the 70s, when Xcel was considering this site for a nuclear power plant, this could have been the Tyrone Energy Park. Instead, this property will be managed consistently with the Lower Chip River State Natural Area and managed cooperatively with the DNR as they manage about 7,000 acres in and around this property. It contains scrub oak barrens, remnant prairie, Dusham Creek, and has a number of different recreational activities that can be done not only on the property, but just nearby in the river and on the state bike trail. A lot of great partners put in a lot of time and energy on this, and I just want to call out the Department of Natural Resources and their staff, Lower Chip River Alliance, Beaver Creek Reserve, and U.S. Fish and Wildlife. So again, you know, there's a pattern here with the number of partnerships that it takes to pull off not only land management projects, but land protection projects as well. Lastly, I'm going to talk about a project that occurred at the very end of last year as well, which is a little bit different. We were approached late last year by Rock and Barbara Martell, who had a 160-acre property about a mile or so from Lake Superior in Bayfield County. They were interested in donating it to us, not an easement, not selling it, just donating it to us. And that's pretty exciting, you know, no matter what the outcome might be. So our staff gets really excited and looks at it pretty closely. And Erica met with Rock on the property and understood his intentions. And our conservation team looked at it, and we knew it had to be protected. It's got a really large ravine, hence the name Old 13 Ravine, for the name of the highway that runs or formerly ran through the property. And we knew it had to be protected. So what we're going to do is sell this property subject to a conservation easement. In this way, it gets permanently protected for perpetuity, and we derive valuable operating income from the sale of property. So it's really a win-win for our staff and our organization. And it's all because of the generosity of Rock and Barbara Martell. So hats off to them. So for those of you that know me, know I like to hold my conservation projects pretty close to my vest until they're done, because things can always go south in the 9th inning. You just never know. But I want to just share with you a couple of projects that are underway that we feel pretty safe in talking about, because we've been out in the public talking about them to some extent for the past year or so, at least 6 months or so. These include conservation easements, acquisitions, and also involve numerous partners. So Kristen talked about our acquisition of the property you see in salmon or pink color here on the map. But we're also actively working with the American Birkebeiner Ski Foundation on a conservation easement on what we call the middle acreage. This will be continued to be owned by the Berkey Ski Foundation and is adjacent to our Telemark Forest Preserve. The two properties are very similar. They both house segments of the Berkey Trail and some other recreational trails. And we're again excited to continue to enhance that partnership with ABSF. Next, Big Rav 10, as we call it, or what I want to call the biggest little 10 acres in Bayfield County. So a lot of you folks from Bayfield area are aware of the Big Ravine and the Big Ravine Trail System. The Big Ravine encompasses 200 acres right now of protected land owned by the town of Bayfield and also down ravine or down slope in the city of Bayfield. The addition of this 10 acres through an acquisition in partnership with Bayfield Area Trails and the township really protects the headwaters. Anytime you can protect the headwaters of a system, you can breathe a sigh of relief, as everything downstream becomes more important and the integrity of it just increases. Without protecting the headwaters, you run the risk of something horrible that could happen and impact all your property downstream. So we're really excited to hopefully close on this in the very near future. I don't want to say exactly when, because it could be a day, it could be a week, it could be a month, but it's coming soon. And again, we're really excited about this. It doesn't sound like a big amount of acres, but it's a really big project. Next is Elk Creek Bottoms in Dunn County. This is about 20 minutes from our office or so, right on the Dunn-Eau Claire line, literally. It's at the confluence of Elk Creek and the Chippewa River. And because of the collision of those two water resources, it's really pops for climate resilience. We're doing this as an acquisition, a bargain sale, from an organization, another nonprofit called the Midwest Institute of Scandinavian Culture. This is an organization that's been around for over 50 years, headquartered in Eau Claire's, and whose mission it is to appreciate and educate folks about the Nordic culture. 30 to 40 years ago, they had planned to build a Nordic cultural center on site, complete with gift shop, lodging, Nordic spa. And for a number of reasons, that just didn't pan out. But we're pleased to be working with them on a concept of every person's ability and freedom to roam on land, which is a Nordic tradition celebrated across many of the Nordic countries, where people have the ability to walk on land, provided they don't impact it. So we're excited to partner with the Midwest Institute on this acquisition and hope to be wrapping this up, hopefully within the calendar year. With that, I'm going to quit talking about projects for a minute, or I'll never leave, and switch gears a little bit and really talk about our relationship with water. You know, I just showed you a dozen or so or 15 slides of our projects, our conservation work, some of our land management projects, and the stewardship of our easements. And there's a number of common denominators, certainly the number of partners it takes, the important habitat it protects. But I think without a doubt, water plays a common theme as you look at so many of our projects. Indeed, it shapes the world that we live in. And every time Landmark considers its impact on the land, whether we should protect something or not protect something, we're considering water, whether we're going to buy it, place a conservation easement on it, or even in conducting our management activities. So having the tools to help us understand the water-related issues and challenges and opportunities in Northwest Wisconsin is really critical to our work. With this in mind, it's my distinct pleasure to introduce our guest speaker, Pamela Toshner of the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. Pamela serves as the statewide lake and watershed protection specialist for DNR, as well as lake biologist in 5 counties and the Healthy Lakes and Rivers team leader. Pamela recently coordinated a work group that engaged a diverse group of partners, including our own Jane Anklem, who was a former Landmark Conservancy staff member, in working to develop a new Wisconsin water resources protection program called Healthy Watersheds, High Quality Waters. This program is one of the first of its kind in the nation. Pamela and her husband, Scott, who also works for the DNR and the fisheries program, live on a shoreline property in Bayfield County, and we all know where that is, with their twin 12-year-old daughters, which I just learned about. So I hope middle school is working out for you, Pamela, with those kids. They all enjoy things water-related, including cross-country skiing, mountain biking, and hunting. Again, with that, I'll turn the mic over to Pamela Toshner.
Thanks, Rick. Appreciate the introduction, and I appreciate being here today. So as Rick mentioned, I'll be talking about our new statewide water resources protection program, Healthy Watersheds, High Quality Waters. The acronym is HWHQW, which is a mouthful, but it is the only acronym like it, so that's a good thing. We also are calling it the Wonderful Waters of Wisconsin, a little catchier and more understandable for, you know, the general public. Before I get started though, I just want to say how honored I am to be here. The work that land trusts and landowners who are permanently protecting land, to me, is just the best thing people can do out there. And it's just a real pleasure to be here. And I'm serious when I say I've been to some meetings with Landmark Conservancy and other land trust staff, directors, and property owners who are dedicating their land to future generations. And I feel like I'm surrounded by rock stars. So thank you so much for the invitation again. Next slide, please. Before I get started, I wanted to acknowledge our team. They're listed on the left, and all those team members in that column are in the Water Resources program at DNR. So this program really started out as a water resource emphasis, but we learned right away it has much broader interest and engagement. And as a result, we had the DNR staff that you see listed in that middle column support us with technical and planning assistance along the way. A lot of those folks are from other programs and divisions like forestry, lands, natural heritage conservation. And then we had a suite of external partners who helped us early on and also provided mostly technical assistance, including Jane Inklum, as Rick mentioned. So thanks to all these people for kicking things off with us. Next slide, please. As most of you know, Wisconsin is blessed with a tremendous abundance of water resources. We have enough stream miles to travel the equator almost 3 times. We have over 17,000 lakes, over 5 million acres of wetlands. The unfortunate news with the wetlands is we had twice as many wetlands historically, but they've been lost due to various land use changes. And we have 650 miles of Great Lake shoreline. Next slide, please. All that being said, we have not made major investments in the protection of water resources, at least in the water resource program at DNR. We certainly have funded some land acquisition projects through various grant programs. And we talk a lot about protecting water resources, but when push comes to shove, most of our funding we get, both state funds and our federal Clean Water Act funds, has been dedicated to restoring impaired waters. And in the last year or so, the EPA worked with the Environmental Law Institute to dig into how those Clean Water Act funds are being distributed across the nation and to tribal to states and tribal nations, and only about 5% of federal Clean Water Act funding is dedicated for protection purposes. So there's a push at the federal level to sort of move the needle forward on protection, and then there's been a push here at DNR as well. Our team that I mentioned earlier kicked off back in 2019, and we weren't sure, you know, what our mission exactly was. Fortunately, around that time, our water quality program leaders drafted an internal strategic plan. And the goal within that, the first goal within that plan was to develop a statewide water resources protection program. And you can see there are 4 objectives listed here. Those were lifted directly from that internal strategic plan. The objectives by theme are to increase technical assistance, adapt program tools, increase funding, and increase external awareness of healthy waters in Wisconsin. So our team basically lifted that internal plan and drafted a kickoff strategy, which you see the cover of it on the right. That's the Wonderful Waters of Wisconsin. And within that kickoff strategy, we shared some questions about what a statewide water resources program might look like. And the goal of that plan was just to reach out to partners and let them know that we're developing a statewide protection program, but also to engage them in forthcoming, at the time, forthcoming discussion groups to really dig in and craft this new effort. Next slide, please. So along with the planning element, we also had this modeling and assessment component. And the big question is, or was, where are the healthy waters in Wisconsin? And in order to dive deeper into that, we needed to come up with some definitions. I'm not going to read these verbatim for you, but I want to share that our healthy watershed definition is basically EPA's definition of a healthy watershed. And the key words in there are natural land cover. So we're really, the modeling work we did really focuses on natural land cover, things like forests, grasslands, prairies, and then hydrological connectivity. And for those that don't know, watershed is an area of land that drains to a lake, stream, or wetland, and watersheds come in all sizes. We're using about an average 30 square mile watershed, but there's massive watersheds like the Mississippi River drainage basin, which covers, touches multiple states. So healthy watersheds are modeled. High quality waters are based on empirical information collected through monitoring. So if a water body has not been monitored, it is not going to shake out on the high quality waters list. But if it has been, and it's hits 2 of 3 of these bullet points here, we identified it as a high quality water. So it needs to be a unique or rare resource, attaining state water quality standards, and have good to excellent biotic integrity. Unique or rare resource examples are things like trout waters, wild rice waters, water bodies within state natural areas, for example. And unfortunately, as I mentioned earlier, wetlands have often been overlooked. They're not even assessed for Clean Water Act purposes. And that's where we see often the most rapid change and cumulative loss through time. So we've also included wetlands in this program, unique wetlands and those with the least disturbed reference conditions. Next slide, please. So this map is a little busy and I'll walk us through it. But essentially, we identified healthy watersheds throughout the states after we engaged partners in our virtual discussion groups last spring. We heard loud and clear that people thought we should have geographic priorities. So what we landed on was the 30% healthiest watersheds in the state would be at least a DNR, our geographic priorities. And you can see on the left-hand side, the map of the state of Wisconsin. Those are the 30% healthiest, with the darkest blue, the healthiest, and the greenish colors at that 30th percentile. We also heard loud and clear, though, that people want to know in other parts of the state, for example, the southern part of the state where there may not be a lot of statewide priorities, what are the healthiest watersheds remaining? So the model allows us to provide the results at other scales, and in this case, we've identified major river and Great Lake drainage basins. So the map in the middle is just the Rock River Basin, and that includes areas like Madison, Wisconsin, for example. And you can see within the Rock River Basin, we've identified the healthiest 30% watersheds at that scale. And then the final step after we identify our healthy watersheds is to identify the high quality waters within those watersheds. So on the top right, that is the Scuppernong Creek watershed zoomed out. Within it, you can see there's 3 streams, 1 lake, and 11 high quality wetlands. So again, this is our statewide priority approach. We have a statewide priorities, and then in each major river and Great Lake drainage basin, we have the priorities listed for there too. And I'll just mention again that those healthiest watersheds align with the most forested parts of the state or within each of those river or Great Lake basins. Next slide, please. I was able to work with our GIS specialist, Chris Smith, thanks to Landmark for providing some of this information to integrate Landmark's current conservation projects and those climate resiliency focus areas with the statewide priority map. And you can see it's a pretty close match, the areas where Landmark is already doing or has easements or other nature preserves and other projects, as well as these climate resiliency focus areas are very similar at a statewide scale. I did take the time, I'm not showing the maps today, to do those major river basin results. And when you look at like the upper Mississippi Black Root and the Chippewa River Basin, for example, it does pick up some of those projects as well as the focus areas for those specific river basins. So I think it's very cool and rewarding to see the priorities and the projects are aligning quite similarly here. Next slide, please. I just wanted to mention too that Lindsey had been involved in a lot of this work in Minnesota, and I know Michigan is pulling this work into some of the programs that they have, but essentially there's science out there that shows when you protect 75% of forested land cover specifically, you can protect things like Cisco populations in deep water lakes, also known as Tellabe in Minnesota. So we've pulled some of that science and those thresholds into Healthy Watersheds, high quality waters. And the target is 75% permanent land or permanent protection of natural land cover in those smaller watersheds. And I'm encouraging even individual property owners to really think about the natural land cover on their property, because that 75% target is reasonable. Even, you know, if you have a lot of mowed lawn, for example, we can stop mowing and restore, plant more trees, plant more native plants, and every person who pitches in can help get to that target. When we're under 75%, we're talking more about enhancement and maybe bringing in some of the more traditional restoration type best management practices to make up for the losses or differences there. Next slide, please. So shifting to our action plan, I mentioned that we had virtual discussion groups. We had 8 of them and over 160 people participated, representing over 90 organizations. We considered it a win. Actually, COVID certainly is not a good thing, but we were able to reach many more people virtually than we would have been able to reach had we met in person. I believe Lindsey and Erica participated from Landmark, so thank you for that. So we took that kickoff strategy I mentioned earlier and we fine-tuned it into an action plan. And the action plan was just released in April. And basically the actions within the action plan were suggested by a majority of discussion groups. So we really approach this democratically. This is not a DNR specific plan. It's what we're considering more of an aspirational partner plan that we can work together on. The overall intent, again, is to balance protection more with restoration efforts to really protect recreational use, healthy ecosystems, and biodiversity. Our guiding principles, I just want to quickly mention, we're going to keep using science to identify our statewide protection priorities. That being said, if local partners want to use a modeling and assessment results, and maybe they want to go for top 10% watershed protection or just focus on high quality waters, that's totally fine. We want to be able to share the results and train people on how to use that information. And I already mentioned balancing protection and restoration with the key outcome of protecting 100% of our healthy watersheds and high quality waters through 2030. And I'll mention 2030 was specifically identified as our timeline to try and align with the 30 by 30 efforts globally to conserve 30% of the planet's land and water. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to walk through a couple example actions, and the actions are sorted by those major objectives. So technical assistance, program tools, funding, and awareness. And I'm going to explain this slide a little because it's right from our action plan. There's 25 actions within that action plan. But you see on the bottom, leveraging partnerships. Those 5 icons represent the 5 partner groups that we, or kind of partner categories that we reached out to in our discussion group. So businesses and chambers of commerce, fish, wildlife, and land trust organizations, Lake, watershed, and river groups are the canoe, and then the government building is government partners other than the DNR, and then the DNR was a cross-program participation team. So within this action plan, we have sort of identified who might take a lead on various actions. Once again, it's not necessarily straight up a DNR thing. So in this case, it's Fish, Wildlife, and Land Trust organizations, other government partners, and DNR might take the lead on helping with this toolkit. The other component of the action plan is we know since this program is new and we're pretty sure it's the first program like it in the country right now, that some things have to happen before others can. So we took this ripple effect approach where we say things are ready to go now. Most of those are DNR-led actions. Then we have next and then after that. So this is timed out almost 10 years. But the example here is we want to create a toolkit with a menu of best management practices, and best management practices is used somewhat loosely here. These might be like case studies or guidance or workshops. And the three main best management practices we're interested in are permanent land protection, which you folks have been working on for decades and are experts at, forested watershed conservation, and natural flood management. Those three best practices are not typical in the realm of the water resources work that we do at DNR at least. So we're looking forward to working with partners on that. Next slide, please. Another example action is funding related. We want to evaluate and improve current DNR funding opportunities. And I know this is a busy slide. The gist of this is we got a lot of feedback on DNR's current funding opportunities. And while there's millions and millions of dollars, there's some real impediments to getting protection done. Just how we dedicate the funding, the timelines are too short. Often eligible activities don't really reflect the reality of long-term land protection, management, and sort of maintenance of properties. So we hope to dive into some of those nuances and improve them down the road. And I'll also mention with this is that we recently applied for a Midwest Glacial Lakes Partnership grant along with Michigan and Minnesota to bring that forested conservation vision to life across the 3 states. And we also applied for an America the Beautiful Challenge grant to make some of these program changes within DNR related to funding and to dive deeper into the best practices. So, and again, we had good support from Landmark and Nature Conservancy and others. Thank you so much for that. Hopefully it gets funded. Next slide, please. The data, so I didn't dive deep into the technical information, and I know it's over my head often, but some people, it seems like every meeting we go to or call we do, there's a few people who are very, very interested in the details of the technical information. So I wanted to share that we have a technical report that explains the modeling and all the indicators we use. We also have an interactive viewer where you can go in and highlight a watershed and understand if it's a statewide or major river or Great Lake drainage basin protection opportunity. We also have by county lists of high quality waters, including the wetlands. So there's multiple tools here to look more closely at the data and the results. And next slide. I think I saw a comment pop up about the action plan, and it is on our website. So you could go to the DNR website and Google healthy watersheds, it'll pop right up. Or as I mentioned earlier, our long acronym HWHQW, you can just do a general Google search and it should be one of the top things that comes up. So our action plan is there, modeling and assessment results, the viewer, and everything else. So I just want to thank you again for being here. I'm really excited as we pivot to implementation to work more with partners like Land Trusts, like Landmark, because I think there's a lot of good things to come for protecting water resources.
All right. Thank you so much, Pamela. It was wonderful to have you with us, and we appreciate all that you've shared. And it's just so exciting to see Wisconsin at the forefront of an important movement in water resource protection. And it's really exciting for us to, as Landmark, to see how closely and compatible our priorities are in alignment. So we're eager to take next steps as they present themselves, and grateful for the partnership of the DNR.
Thank you.
Next up, I am pleased to introduce Lindsey Ketchel, our Executive Director. And she has some closing remarks, as well as we'll field our general Q&A, as well as some specific Q&A related to the Brownstone Trail. Lindsey.
Thanks, everybody. And thanks for great job, Pam. Really appreciated hearing all the great updates, what's happening with the state and how important water is to all of us moving forward. And we know how critically important it is. And I'm just reflecting on the presentation in general. And we are building our organization, our staff, and our capacity to take on some of the most pressing issues we're going to be facing. But one thing that we do have here in Wisconsin is an amazing natural resource, and that is water. And a lot of times water is overlooked, especially when it's already clean water. I can tell you in my professional career, restoring water costs a heck of a lot more than protecting it. And many states are recognizing this and making significant investments to ensure that we have the best water. Now, we've also been involved in water, as Rick mentioned in his presentation and shared with you a lot of our programs. And I just wanted to show you very quickly some simple examples of some of the work we've done in the last couple of years around water protection, specifically in Gull Lake in the Minerva chain and Love Lake region. There was a proposed campground coming into the region. It was looking at almost 230 new units were going to be placed onto a very small acreage. And a lot of times it's that high density that our waters really can't take. Our waters and our lakes like it to be balanced and simple. In this case, that community came together, raised the funds, purchased the proposed campground and its infrastructure, and then donated that property back to us. And yes, Rick is running a campground, but we are going to be gradually moving forward and converting that into a park, and then also working with the existing landowners to ensure that they enjoy their time on the lake also. Another project that we got involved in had to do with the Grindstone Lake Foundation and the Grindstone Lake. There was an active cranberry bog on that site. And after a while, the cranberry bog disappeared and folks were thinking about, oh, let's develop it and add more density to this lake. Rick Remington can show you a file fairly thick of the number of times we engaged with this issue, but I am delighted to share that the Grindstone Lake Foundation and the Grindstone Lake put the monies together and now have successfully acquired that. We provided a small little grant to assist them also. Now that they have the acquisition under their belt, they'll be moving forward with restoration. And then we've got the South Shore streams, or you can also look at 10 Mile Creek. Again, protection work we've been doing in this region for at least 20 years or more. But one thing that I think is so important as we at Landmark evaluate and consider, how do we want to move forward with our water protection work here, and how do we go about that messaging? As many of you know, we prioritize some of the climate and resiliency areas. These are high biodiversity. They're really critically important. As Rick mentioned, that overlap with water is very real. And we feel that water may be the better messenger to help us entice landowners to get engaged. And so I just wanted to share with you very briefly a little bit about the work I did in Minnesota, where we used the Tuolumne Cisco as our targeted messenger to the general public of why we needed to protect very deep cold water. The Tuolumne Cisco are like the canary in the coal mine when you're thinking about climate. It has a very tight area where it lives on our lakes, and it can't take a lot of pressure. And that pressure sometimes can cause die-off and can affect water quality. And as most people know, us folks in conservation, we love our maps, we love our science, we love our data. We do this to drive us to protect the best parcels available. So this was a lake in northern Minnesota where we used sensitive shoreline data. We also used size of parcel inlet, type of forest, and wetland populations on those properties. And then in the middle map, the map to the right is an outreach map. The highlighted dark blue are the parcels that we want to try to protect the most, that will get us the most bang for our buck conservation and get to that 75% forested landscape, thus ensuring that the water quality will remain high. And in this case, over 3 to 5 years, we will able to find 5 landowners to donate conservation easements and build a great network of folks moving forward to protect that lake. But we also have to be aware when it comes to clean water and great water, other people may want to come and join the party. So we should always be careful and understand that we're going to have to apply smart growth, because not everybody's going to want this to be your neighbors, right? But they're coming. So we have to protect our water and create space for all and everyone to enjoy the natural resources that we have. So at this point in time, again, thank you so much for taking the time this evening to enjoy our presentation. Appreciate everything that was shared. It's done amazing work. We're so deeply appreciative of that.